Alright, as you can see, we have quite the selection of picks for you today. We've got some standard size picks, we've got some Dunlops, Fenders, we've got the traditional jazz style picks, we've got a couple different Swiss picks, and a couple different Winspears for you. Let's take a closer look at some of these styles now. Alright, so first up we have a Fender pick. It's a standard size, it's going to be a thin thickness, and these are going to be made out of celluloid, which is going to be what all your basic picks are made out of. As you can see, it's very pliable and very flexible. Next up, we're going to have a Jim Dunlop pick, which is going to be the same size, only this one's going to be a medium thickness, meaning it's going to have a lot less give than the thin size we just looked at. This one's also going to be made out of celluloid. The last standard size we're going to have is going to be another Jim Dunlop, only this one's going to be a heavy thickness, meaning it doesn't really have any give to it. This is also made out of celluloid. The first unusual pick we're going to look at is going to be the Big Stubby, also made by Jim Dunlop. This is going to be made out of a Lexan material. Now what I found when I was doing this review is that the Lexan tended to have a bit of a brighter sound to it. The way this pick differs from a standard pick is it's going to be a little bit fatter, and it's got a kind of a bevel in the middle where your thumb goes, trying to offer a bit more grip. Next up, we're going to have the world-famous jazz style pick. It's probably every lead guitarist's go-to pick. They offer two different types. There's the standard red nylon jazz style, and then the black stiffo nylon. I did find while I was doing this test that the black and the red do feel slightly and sound slightly different, but most of the difference was in the feel for me. They're also going to be a very stiff pick with almost no flexibility. Next up, we have the Swiss pick, which a lot of people tend to write off as gimmicky, but honestly, they work. The holes really do give you more grip, and your pick, it's not moving out of your hands. They're going to be made out of a Delrin material, which it's supposed to give you a bit of a warmer attack. You can also get the Rusty Cooley version, which has a polycarbonate base, and it gives you a bit of a brighter sound. I have them in two different sizes. They're both going to be the 2mm thickness, so they're not going to have a lot of give to them, but that's just how I like my picks, is thick. Alright, now we come to our first Winspear. The first one we're going to have here is going to be the Ice Grip Broadsword. The material this is made out of is abbreviated UHMWPE. That's straight from the Winspear website. I'm not sure what it stands for, but it's an awesome material. The selling point of the Ice Grip series is that the edge is buffed just to melting point to give it a nice glossy edge and make it glide right over the strings. As you can see, I have a very thick one here. This one's about 4mm, and it tapers down to a finer point. Next up, we're going to have a Stealth Broadsword, which is going to be made from a PEEK material. I believe that's the abbreviation PEEK. It's a carbon fiber composite, and it's got graphite in it. And the graphite is actually the selling point in the series, is that it self-lubricates the pick, making it, again, glide over the strings much easier. One of the downsides to this pick is because it has that graphite in it, it will leave a little bit of dust on your fingers, but honestly, it's not a big deal. All picks leave some kind of dust on your guitar or whatever if you play with them long enough. This is, again, a bit of a thicker pick. I believe this one's actually only a 2mm, though, and same thing, it tapers down to the finer point. Lastly, we're going to have an Amber Shiv, which I believe is Winspear's latest line. It's going to be made out of an Altum material, and the selling point of this is that it grips more over time as you use it. I've only owned mine for a couple days, so I don't know if that's quite true yet, but you can be sure I'm going to keep playing with it and find out, because so far this is my favorite pick. This is again another thick pick, about 4mm, that tapers down at the end. And one thing you'll really notice about the Winspear that you won't notice on the other picks is the bevels on these are just immaculate. They're gorgeous. You could stare at these things all day. Alright, as I'm sure most of you are probably wondering, this is going to be the amp and cabinet combo that I used to record this. It was my Blackstar HT Club 50 head running through an EVH 2x12. As you can see, here are my EQ settings. Sorry, in hindsight, I probably should have just set the EQ flat, but I didn't, so here are my settings. And as you can see, I have my voice button pushed in on my clean channel. Everything was recorded on a Shure SM57. I didn't EQ or compress anything in post-production, so there you have it. I hope you enjoyed. Everybody, that's been my guitar Plectrum Shootout. I hope you guys could hear the differences. If you didn't, this is going to be the part where I talk about it and kind of tell you what I heard in room and what I felt. One thing I really noticed was I'm not a fan of celluloid picks. The little thin, normal size, standard, medium size, heavy gauge, whatever, I don't like them. I don't know if it's because they're cheap. I don't know if it's because they're cheap. I don't know if it's because of the bevels on them. Not a fan. I actually really struggled with a little bit of that simple lead with some of those thinner picks, especially the really light Fender one. But that being said, the Jazz 3 picks were certainly a large step up from that. I can understand why so many people use them, and they're a great pick. I really can't complain about those. They had a good sound. They were a little warmer sounding than everything else, but that's not a big deal. After that, there was the Swiss picks. The Swiss picks are awesome, actually. I mean, I was really blown away at how well those holes really help. And the Delrin material, although he says it gives you a warmer sound, it's a little brighter than a Jazz pick, and I kind of like that. It's not too bright, it's still warm, but it's not quite as warm as the nylon Jazz picks or the Stiffos nylon Blackstar. That wasn't anything. I'm sorry. The Stiffo nylon Jazz pick. And last but not least, the Winspears. Honestly, the Winspears were a cut above everything else. The Swiss picks are a very close competitor, but the Winspears just had them a little bit on build quality, and the bevels on the Winspear are just phenomenal. They just glide over the strings. All three of the models I had they just glide over the strings. It's amazing. That being said, they are very expensive, and they're not something I'd want to tour with. So I'd probably, buy a big stock of Swiss picks if I was going on tour. A few other things I noticed. While the thinner picks might have been good for like strumming, while they feel good strumming, they give it that nice click sound, but I found when I used a thicker pick, like the Ice Grip Winspear that I had, that was like a 4mm, the bass notes really rung out like a lot more noticeably than they did with any of the other picks I used, and that was actually really nice. The small Jazz sizes were phenomenal for lead work. You can't beat it. They're just so precise. So I guess really what I'm saying is there's different picks for different jobs, and you should all have a variety of picks in your little guitarist toolbox to pick from, depending on what you're doing. If you've enjoyed my video, please smash that subscribe button, follow me, you know the drill.